Hi everyone, this is Jim with JP Reacts, where you come to see translations and reactions and analysis of what politicians say every day so you can have better conversations at home and online. Today, we're going to look at a press conference recently done on the 12th with Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer recently after the election. So we'll start right after this. Okay, let's jump right into hearing what the speaker had to say first.
Deaths have been caused. And what are they doing now? Continuing to ignore in spite of these numbers that should be so compelling, that are an imperative for us to act upon this. Every kind of avoidance of taking responsibility has been witnessed. Every chance that we had for testing, tracing, treatment, mask wearing, separation, sanitation, but science tells us to do, they have ignored. Their contempt for science and their disdain for governance. Science says wear a mask. Governance says let's enforce that. Science, governance, that's not what they're about.
So the speaker started off with some COVID numbers. This is a very political section, so I'm not really going to talk a lot about the politics of it, but just really go through what she was talking about, specifically arguing that the Republicans in Congress have been arguing against the science and governance, and what she means by that is they've been publicly at least have been arguing against the scientific measures that could work to mitigate the coronavirus. Mask wearing, social distancing, limiting attendance at big events, things like that. So that's what she's talking about science-wise. And then governance, she was referring to a lot of the time against government help to help small businesses and to help families that have been out of work, because a large portion of the population has lost their job during this coronavirus crisis. So what she really wants is for everybody to come together to pass a bill to get relief to families and businesses affected by the coronavirus and work together to really embrace both the science and the governance part of that job. So that's what she was mainly talking about there. Let's listen to the next part of her opening statement.
Is something of another subject. Right now, we are talking about addressing the crisis, the pandemic. If we do so scientifically, we will be able to open our economy. We'll be able to open our schools safely. We're able to do so in a way that recognizes the tragedy that has befallen us in our country because of the Republican denial.
Okay, so here again, she's really focused on the science and talking about the mitigation efforts across the country, making sure we have a national plan when it comes to these mitigation efforts. And when we have these that's what's going to lead to schools opening, the economy opening, and really providing a bounce back from the devastation that the virus has wreaked on the country so far. So using the science of how to mitigate it along with the vaccines that are going to be coming along down the line is really the way to move the country forward, to help the country open back up and move towards a better way of managing during this crisis. So let's check out her next section of her opening statement.
And economic crises. When it comes to the election, Republicans, congressional Republicans, don't have the evidence. They don't have the proof. They don't have anything. Neither does the president. Congressional Republicans are deliberately casting doubt on our elections for no other reason but fear of Donald Trump. These Republicans are all auditioning for profiles in cowardice.
Actually, that last section was by Minority Leader Schumer. I apologize for that lead-in, but he was mainly focused in on the election and the results. He wants to make sure that he was basically rehashing what has been out in the news at this point. As of this taping, President Trump's legal team has lost yet another case, so they're 1-25 on their cases about voter fraud. That one case being where they changed the way that observers could watch the count of mail-in vote ballots. Originally, it was ruled that they were too far away. So it hasn't really changed any votes, hasn't changed any votes, hasn't changed any outcome in the election. Joe Biden is president-elect. Kamala Harris is vice president-elect. That's not going to change. There has been no evidence of fraud, and the fact that congressional Republicans have been backing the president's claim that there has been fraud means they're not really standing up for democracy. And the people's votes are what matters, and by undermining the confidence in the vote, you're really undermining the very foundation of what the country stands for. And he's urging congressional Republicans to back away from that and come back to the table so we can really focus on the crisis of the moment, which is the coronavirus. So let's check out the Minority Leader Schumer's next statement.
The HEROES Act, passed in the House, does meet this moment. It doesn't pick and choose who we're going to help during the greatest health and economic crises in decades. It's laser focused on health care issues that are at the heart of this pandemic. The HEROES Act does something that's vital. It strengthens Medicaid and improves access to health care coverage, support for hospitals. At a time when COVID is raging, health care money, Medicaid expansion should be at the very top of the list.
Okay, in this part of the video, Minority Leader Schumer was really talking about the HEROES Act that was passed by the House back in the summer. This is the second relief package that the House passed in order to address the needs of the country during the COVID crisis. So let's actually review what's in the HEROES Act. So first of all, it's a $2.2 trillion act to help protect the country. Gives more support to small businesses, renews the Paycheck Protection Program, otherwise known as PPP, which is helps businesses and nonprofits by giving them loans, and then if they meet certain thresholds, they're able to turn those loans into grants, so they don't have to pay them back. Moreover, they are adding protections, or adding actually the airlines to the PPP, which will help the airlines a lot because, as you can imagine, during COVID times, not a lot of travel, so a lot of those airlines are struggling right now to pay the bills, and we don't want them to go under and go bankrupt because a lot of people will lose their jobs. More money to bolster education and childcare, which is going to help remote learning, make sure infrastructure is in place and students are supported during this time when anything can happen and anything can kind of go wrong. So it's about making sure that there's money around to help those people in need. The second part of this is honoring heroes. They're giving money to basically the states to help fund their governments. States, every state around the country, blue states, red states, they're all struggling. You got to think about it when people aren't buying things. No state revenue. When people aren't working, no state revenue. There's giant holes in the budgets of these states. Has nothing to do with the way that they were managed. It's 100% due to the COVID crisis. So the states need money to help alleviate some of that burden. Provide some money for testing, tracing, and treatment. I talked about a lot of this in the debate videos. Tracing is about going around and anybody that's been exposed to try to quarantine people to prevent the spread. It basically tracks back who's who's talked to who and who's been around who, so it can limit the spread. More direct payments to people, individuals, $1,200 per taxpayer, and then $500 per dependent. That's a second round of stimulus. More tax credits to keep people on the payroll. That's in addition to the PPP. Giving more money to OSHA to enforce CDC guidelines when it comes to workers, and making sure that workers are protected during this time, and employers are doing the right thing to protect their workers. Make sure that people that have lost their jobs still have access immediately to the Affordable Care Act and are getting subsidies. This helps that transition, provide money. Also restores the additional unemployment benefits. If you remember, back in the spring, they added $600 per week for those people that were unemployed to help keep the economy afloat and keep people in their houses. So to go along with that, they want to provide housing assistance for people who are struggling to pay rent and mortgages. This will keep people in their homes and not homeless, because people in their homes usually are better able to impact their lives and the community's lives, and don't end up homeless, which become more money out of the state's budget to take care of them. Provides more money for SNAP benefits, which is the food stamps, so people that are out of work or are low income could still afford to get money for food. And lastly, it added money for safe elections and the census and the post office. I'm guessing in a new bill that some of that would go away, because obviously elections are passed and the census is passed, but there are always elections coming up. I think a lot of local elections are coming up in the spring, so maybe some of that money would move forward to strengthen our elections for the spring as well. So that's basically what's in the HEROES Act. I think Senator Schumer is going to talk about the Republicans' bills next. Let's hear what he has to say.
And debating. And the HEROES Act should be the starting point, not an emaciated bill that prioritizes protections for corporations and considers the needs of American families as an afterthought.
Okay, so Minority Leader Schumer was talking about the Republicans' bill in this section. We got the biggest thing to remember about the Republicans' bill is they never actually passed one. It never got out of the Senate. The Majority Leader McConnell was never able to get his Republicans all on board for the same thing. But what was proposed was about $500 billion in relief for unemployment, more money for education, health care, new funding for the Paycheck Protection Program again. The thing that was a big sticking point is liability protections for businesses and schools. Main reason that Democrats had a sticking point about that particular point is that it would free up businesses that don't follow CDC guidelines for being held accountable to that if any of their employees got sick. So that was why that is such a big sticking point. By giving them liability protection, it's really not really protecting people. Protecting businesses from being irresponsible isn't really a good way to go about business. So that was the Democrats' position on that. So let's, next up is Speaker Pelosi. She added some more information. Let's check that out.
Secondly, and this is almost sinful, crushing the virus is essential. At the time of a pandemic, instead of crushing the virus, they want to crush the Affordable Care Act, as was demonstrated in the Supreme Court the other day.
Okay, so Speaker Pelosi in this section was really talking about the lawsuit from the Trump administration trying to get the Affordable Care Act, or the ACA, thrown out and be deemed unconstitutional. They had oral arguments right before this press conference in the Supreme Court, and it was pretty clear that was the goal. With that, there's a lot of protections that get thrown out the window on top of Medicaid, which is not only for poor and disabled people, it also for nursing homes, which is being especially hard hit by the coronavirus. So that's a big thing. Plus, pre-existing conditions would be gone. Kids staying on their parents' insurance until they're 26 would be gone. There's the Medicare Part D prescription drug loop donut hole that was existing, that would be gone. So that big hole where seniors would have to pay more money for drugs would open back up again. And there's many, many more things that are associated with the Affordable Care Act regulations that would definitely be thrown out if the Affordable Care Act was deemed unconstitutional by Supreme Court. And the fact that the Trump administration is trying to do that during the middle of a pandemic doesn't seem as a very smart case to make. If you have a problem with the additional people having insurance and all the regulations, maybe take that up after we're past this crisis would make the most sense to me. So let's look at what Speaker Pelosi said next.
Our economy in a healthy way. And it's all doable. Let me just name it on a hopeful note. The news of the viruses, at least one virus and perhaps another right on the heels, coming out that are very promising and with high levels of protection, should give people motivation to do what is necessary, to self-quarantine, to wear masks, etc., because it will only take a short period of time with many more people doing that to reduce the incidence of the virus on the right as we go into the path of a vaccine. So again, we should be hopeful, but we have to be careful and we have to honor the science, whether it's about how we embrace a vaccine. The vaccine will be, the more it is embraced, the more effective it will be. And the more effective it will be, we need more of it, and call upon the president to use the Defense Production Act to make sure that enough is produced so that everybody is cared for. Because unless we're all protected, and that means in the world, not just in our country, none of us is protected. So on the...
Okay, so Speaker Pelosi wanted to end on a positive note, which there's a lot of doom and gloom with the coronavirus, but there have been some bright spots, especially when it comes to vaccines. There was the Pfizer announcement, which came out last week, where it had 90% effective rate in trials, and then there was a new one that just came out a couple days ago, where they were showing nearly 95% effectiveness in trials. So there is some good news coming down the pike, and we should all hopefully have access to those vaccines, hopefully in the spring is what it's looking like. Maybe the president could, once they become fully authorized, would be able to use the Defense Production Act to make sure we get those pumped out really fast, because we don't need just to cover the United States. Really, the only way we're protected is if the world has access to the vaccine, and we need all hands on deck to really put the vaccine out there to get it in as many hands as possible. The trials look promising. There's still some more trials to go through, so hopefully they continue to look promising in the future. But that's good news, and I'm glad she ended on a positive note. After she did that, she opened it up to questions from the news outlets. Basically, all the questions led to both Speaker Pelosi and Minority Leader Schumer rehashing what they said in previous statements. So I'm not really going to show any of that because it's just a repeat of what they said before. It's not really going to be adding to the content of what you're trying to learn from this video. But if you want to go back, obviously the link is in the description. It's not a very long video. So I would say if you're looking to see that part of it, go to about 12 and a half minutes in, and that's when the question and answer section starts on that video. Okay, so just to wrap things up, that was a video with Speaker Pelosi and Minority Leader Schumer going over primarily COVID response and a little bit about the election. So hopefully my explanations of this helped you in some way learn more about the topic and learn more about basically what they were saying. I know there's a lot of politics thrown into specific policy ideas, so I'm trying to cut through that and really make it easier to understand overall. So hopefully you got that. If you did, please like this video. I really appreciate that. If you thought I did something that sounded completely stupid, of course, feel free to dislike the video. Feedback is feedback as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to hear what you guys think of this press conference in the comments, so please provide any feedback you have, either with Speaker Pelosi or Minority Leader Schumer said, or with maybe what I said in the comments below. But always, please subscribe to the channel so you can get the next, so when the next video pops up, you get a chance to see it right away. Until next time, we'll see you around the internet. Have a great day. Bye.